Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is. Good
evening,
folks,
good morning,
wherever
good
you,
afternoon,
oh my
good whatever
gosh.
it is.
Good
Evening,
folks,
good morning,
wherever
good
you, oh
afternoon,
my
good
gosh.
whatever
So
it is.
many
Good
things that are
folks,
actually now
wherever
making
you,
some
oh my
news
gosh.
going
So
on.
many things that are actually now making some news going on.
So many things that are actually now making some news going on.
So many things that are actually now making some news going on. So many things that are actually now making some news going on. So many things that are actually now making some news going on. So many things that are actually now making some news going on. So many things that are actually now making some news going on. So many things that are actually now making some news going on. So many things. So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that endless repeat? So am I the only one who hears that? So folks in the live chat that's currently going on, folks in the live chat that's currently going on, can you tell us whether folks in the live chat that's currently can you tell us folks in the live chat our voices can you tell us folks in the live I'm hearing it in my head like hello boy is that I'm hearing it in my head like hello boy is that I'm hearing it in my head like. So that might have been on my end. Apparently, I had the sound turned on my teaser in Caster. So that's where I was getting that. Byron, say something because you just went really quiet.
Life could be a dream.
No, that's not saying something, Byron. That's singing something. All right, folks. Apologies, big apologies for all of that confusion. We are operating live from the lobby of the South Fleet Motor Inn in South Wellfleet, Massachusetts, out on Cape Cod during the first day of our cosplay and photography week on Cape Cod, which is something we do, have been doing for the last couple of years. So that's why you're seeing sort of some random stuff. I've got my background just playing. Manny is actually sitting right across from me. Wave, Manny. There you go. And he's got one of those cool backgrounds. And Byron is in the beautiful city of Lowell, Massachusetts, rocking the cool jazz black and white, which is actually kind of appropriate for our topic today. So as we have said, this is the Full Fat Spoiler Chat, folks, brought to you by us folks at Nerd Caliber. It is a spoilery show. We are going to be talking spoilers about Lovecraft Country. Just ended last week. Its first season. If you do not know about Lovecraft Country, or if you haven't seen it, I should say, and you don't want spoilers, please turn off, go away. Or if you don't mind spoilers, you can hang around. It's up to you, but that's why there's a big word spoilers up at the top, and it says Full Fat Spoiler Chat at the bottom. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about everything related to Lovecraft Country during this time, and mostly concentrating on sort of the themes that run through it, which is, not surprisingly, racism. The question is this like a really heavy-handed social commentary, or is just really heavy, like deep, kind of dark, brilliant storytelling? I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, and joining me tonight, we're going to start with the man with the best mustache in the world. Introduce yourself if you would.
Hello, everyone. I'm Groucho Marx. I'm part of the Marx Brothers. This is Manny Ortiz. This is the editor of Nerd Caliber, a video editor at Nerd Caliber, and I guess I'm also a founder of some sort, I guess.
No, like the founder. You're not a founder. You are the founder.
Don't sell you so short.
So hold on a sec. Kepera is on our Twitch. Kepera has the echo stopped. Much better. Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. Very cool. And also joining us in the cool jazz black and white. Introduce yourself, sir.
What's going on, Hepcats? It is me, Byron McNeil, rocking the black and white because I want to stay in theme for the show. I am a contributing writer for Nerd Caliber. Once upon a time, I did social media for Nerd Caliber. And I also am something of an artist. I do a bunch of different stuff all over the internet. These days I'm pimping my Instagram because I'm doing this Inktober/Digitober challenge. I'm a couple of days behind because I don't like these past two prompts. so I'll get them out sooner or later. The past 2 prompts have been pumpkin pie and full moon, and
Okay.
yeah,
Hmm.
I get lazy when they're dull prompts. What can I say?
It's pumpkin pie. It's orange. You can just do a Trump cartoon.
Why
So
didn't I think of that?
there you go. So let's see. We'll do some welcomes here. Like I said on Twitch, welcome Kepera Cosplay. On the YouTubes, we welcome Valentina Amandina Simone. And Waifu Pennywise, thanks for just joining. Again, Waifu, want to make sure that you know this is spoilers for Lovecraft Country. Evan, GM, welcome to the show. So let's start with a little description about what it is that we're talking about here. Lovecraft Country is an HBO series that was based on a book written by Matt Ruff that tells the story of a young black man, Atticus Freeman, and his sort of extended family as they travel across the pre-civil rights movement 1950s America in search of his missing father, and to learn about some of the secrets that involve or that are surrounding his parentage and lineage. They go to various locations that are supposedly based on stuff that H.P. Lovecraft actually wrote, or something very similar to it. That's the short, real quick version of the story. The series has an amazing cast. It is executive produced by both J.J. Abrams and Jordan Peele. I'm going to guess Jordan Peele had almost everything to do about it.
Because I don't see any lens flares at all.
No lens flare, and realistically, there's no much of anything else that you would call J.J. Abrams' influence in this, but it is all Jordan Peele.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a Jordan Peele story. So that's basically what the story is about. And let's start with talking about the things that we like about the show before we get into some of the deeper themes and meanings. Let's start with Byron. Byron, what do you like about the show?
There's a lot that I like about the show. First thing that comes to mind is just the overall representation of these various minority characters. You have Jamie Chung's character who is added on later on in the first season, but she definitely makes her mark. And I've been following her career post Real World for many years, and the fact that she gets such a media role like this is amazing.
Yeah.
Journey Smollett Bell, she's been in the industry for forever, and I love everything she does, especially this role as Letitia Lewis. It's got some teeth to it, and I'd be scared to piss her off. just the cast as a whole. Everyone is so nuanced. Especially Tick's father, who's real Michael Kenneth
Williams.
Yeah, Michael Kenneth Williams. I love him in anything he does. I recently watched some interviews promoting the show, and he is just he's dedicated to the arts. He's dedicated to his craft, and the fact that he's willing to do black roles that are off the beaten path shows what a nuanced person and actor he is.
Yep. Manny, what do you like about the show?
Well, I agree with Byron 100%. That the casting is excellent. There is no character. Whoever's the casting director for this series, give them a raise because they did an excellent job. Every character in the show, every sub story in the show is amazing. There was nothing when they went off the beaten path here and there. There was nothing about it that I felt like it was like I was lost or bored or anything like that. Everything was interesting. I'm a big fan of Pulp Fiction, not the film, although that I do like the film as well. But pulp, as in the old early 1900 stories with Doc Savage or Bronze or that Bronze Age
Captain Midnight.
Yeah, So this series had a lot of that. Haunted houses, searching, finding a map to find lost treasure, monsters of all sorts, from little scary girl demons, which freaking amazing. I can't believe how much of that
Yes.
messed me up. Um, but
Yeah.
uh, but it's excellent. If you're looking for good horror with something to take with you afterwards, social commentary wise, this is it.
Absolutely.
So before I get into what I like about it, just I looked this up real quickly. Casting director was Kim Coleman, who was casting director for Dear White People and Wu Tang and American Saga, among many, many others.
Wow.
So yeah, The Good Lord Bird, the new TV miniseries.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, that's that's why they got so many good people, I bet.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. Same thing with the casting was fantastic. Everybody in this is so good. Um, let me see if I can find his photo real quickly. And that's Uncle George, the character in the
Play
show.
Played by
That's
Courtney B.
Courtney B.
Vance.
Vance. Yeah, I love Courtney B. Vance. I think he's an amazing actor.
Mm.
I did not recognize him because there was zero of the usual Courtney B. Vance smooth dude, which is in almost everything he ever does. I
Oh,
mean, no matter who the
absolutely.
character is, there's smooth. And this guy is a smart nerd. That's the
Yeah,
only way to describe him.
absolutely.
So all of that, Jonathan Majors as Atticus, the main character, like you said, Journey Smollett Bell as Letitia, absolutely wonderful. The Christina, who's pretty much the main villain,
Yes.
was the Dag in Mad Max Fury Road,
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
and so many other things. I when I looked up her IMDb, it's like, wow, like this is a ton of movies. Just from Fury Road to this, she's been really busy. Everybody is wonderful as a cast member in this, and the characters are written so incredibly well. They are some of the most complex human beings. Let's get Courtney B. Vance off the screen there. Some of the most complex human beings written in a drama, whether in this case it's a sort of fantasy horror drama or just any real drama
absolutely.
that you've ever seen. Um, these are people who have dealt with horrible things, done horrible things in some cases. There isn't a one of them that is like a pure paladin-like figure, and that's fantastic. It makes their stories more believable. It makes the horror that they go through more believable. It's really complex characterization, really intricate storytelling. Um, so there's a thing in narrative storytelling called the Chekhov's gun rule. It comes
Yes.
from the playwright Chekhov, where it says if you show in a sort of a predominant way a gun like mounted on a wall in uh, Act One, you'd better have somebody use that gun in Act Three.
Yes.
This does that in multiple cases with presenting something in earlier episodes that then weave back in, sometimes multiple times, to what ultimately is the payoff in the final acts.
A perfect example of that would be the little subplot that was with Hippolyta.
The subplot with Hippolyta, or also the hero that rescues them, the mysterious man with the baseball bat.
Yes.
Yes.
All of that is in this. All of that complexity is in this show, and it pays off for the most part really well.
Hmm.
Waifu, wait, I think I've seen the trailer while I was watching things on YouTube. If you don't want to have this spoiled, Waifu, I suggest you click off. But if you don't mind, stay with us, and we'll be talking about some of the wonderful things about this show.
Yes.
So that complexity of both storytelling and characterization is a hallmark of Jordan Peele. He didn't direct any of this, like not a single episode. He is an executive producer, but boy, is this a Jordan Peele joint.
Oh,
Yeah.
indeed.
And Misha Green, who was the showrunner for
Yep.
this, she did an excellent job. She even wrote some episodes also, she did incredible work. This is great. I think she's also, I have to double check. I know she's directing something, another horror movie, I believe. Maybe Candyman, I'm thinking of. I'll have to double check that. But I want to follow her. I mean, showrunners make or break a series, in my opinion. I mean, look at American Gods. Look at that travesty. Could have been so great, but they just dropped the ball on that. But Mr. Green, that I want to follow more of her work. That was excellent.
Yep.
Good job.
Also, I wanted to point out that the directors are women of color. I
Mm.
can't recall their names, but I know for a fact that they're women of color.
So not all of them, and this really surprised me. Helen Shaver directed one of the episodes.
Oh,
Supergirl.
Okay.
Like the original movie Supergirl and Ballad of Billie Jean and so on has been apparently for a long time a director going back well more than a decade and directed some of my favorite episodes of some of my favorite nerdy shows.
Awesome.
Because once I saw that she was a director of one of the episodes, I'm like, okay, now I got to dig down and find out what else she's done. And like, is this a one-off? Is she just getting into directing? Oh no. Supernatural, Jericho, it's like a ton of stuff. So Kepra is saying that I'm still echoing, and I'm guessing that's because I'm speaking so loud that Manny's mic is picking me up 6 feet away here. So apologies for that. This won't happen next time because we'll all be remote again. But says, I love how creative it is, and I fucking love that it is not told from a white perspective. It has opened my eyes so much.
Woo!
I have to admit here, I didn't know anything about the Tulsa Race Massacre until the TV show Watchmen, and I cried my eyes out, not only for them, but for the fact that I was never told anything about the history. So when Lovecraft Country brought it into their story, I was like, yes, we dropped enough F-bombs, but yes, people need to know, and they do. They need to know also about the what's the town in North Carolina again? Begins with a W. Byron, the coup.
Not, is it Winston-Salem?
No, I think it's Wilmington.
Oh yeah, Wilmington. Yes, it is Wilmington.
And Kepra, if you don't know about that, look it up. The only actual coup in which an elected government, in this case a town government, was overthrown by the Klan.
I actually grew up close to Wilmington, so
yeah,
that hit kind of home for me.
So yeah, definitely check out that piece of info. There's so much of this horror in our history that, I mean, here's the thing that once you get through the show is pretty obvious. Lovecraft Country is the United States. It's not that they travel around to Lovecraft Country. It's for black people, well, currently still really, but certainly in the segregated 1950s, the United States was a land of horror. And that is, I'm 100% sure, what the actual meaning of the title of this show is. That sure, they go to places like scary, spooky New England towns that are really out of like the Dunwich Horror and so on. I'm not really sure what Wishing Star is saying here, but we're just going to hide you because that's a really silly thing to say on YouTube. Anyway, is there anything that we didn't like, folks? Byron.
There were a couple of little plot holes that kind of bugged me. Like in the final episode, how Letitia's spell mark returned to her stomach when she got knocked off the building.
Yep.
I had concerns from a storytelling standpoint, but for the most part, I just rolled with it. But it did kind of just seem out of nowhere. It's if she's awakened to her own magic, say something or make it a little more obvious. Don't just have it reemerge out of nowhere.
Yep. Manny.
It's funny. I was going to say the same thing. That happened so quickly, so fast. I was confused at the end. I had to actually go back and watch that part again so I could see what actually occurred. And then I got it. That part could have been done a little bit better, but that's that's probably my only quibble I really have. Nothing else really stood out. I mean, this is, to me, it's almost a perfect series. I thought Watchmen would have been my. If you would ask me a few months ago, I would say Watchmen. Yeah, that's the best show I've seen this year. It came out in 2019. But no, but Lovecraft Country, it's almost perfect. I do want to say something real fast because
Hmm.
I've seen some people commented, and even some people in my um, that have spoken to me about the show, or like keep asking me like about the social commentary, or like was things really that bad back then? And I I I will say, as a Puerto Rican growing up in the '80s in the Bronx, that I could relate very much to it. The idea that you couldn't really trust authority figures, because I know people, innocent people, that always get messed up by people of power all the time. I remember that feeling that the characters had a lot, living what they were living in their situation, and just trying to get out and trying to survive and be successful. I related to that, completely. To me,
I
that
did,
felt very real.
I did as well. Especially since a lot of there were so many moments dealing with the cops or just dealing with the idea of racial identity. Growing up in the South myself, again, like I said before, growing up in the South myself, it's something I had to deal with a lot. Like as a kid in North Carolina, I was really ignorant to a lot of it because I was a kid. I wanted to be a kid. But looking back, it's like, oh, wow. If I had known that back then, I would have punched him in the face.
So I'm going to do an experiment here where I'm going to actually bring your mics down while I'm speaking to see whether we can stop that echo, and then I'll bring you back up when I'm done. So it'll be a little slightly sort of clumsy back and forth, but I think we have to do this to try to solve these problems. So my only two problems I had. The first one, it's actually related to what you said, Byron, although it's the fact that there are explanations for what look like plot holes in the images that flash by really quickly when Gia is connected to, and again, spoilers, this is the finale, it's the end of the very last episode of the whole season, when Gia is connected to both Atticus and Christina. And there's all of those like mental flashes of what's happening in their minds and what they're remembering. Um, Unless you slow that down, you don't know that Atticus actually taught Dee how to interact with and control the Shoggoth monster. That's in there. And that Christina cast the spell back on Letitia after she landed because she had, well, we assume, she doesn't actually say this is why, but because she had promised Ruby that she wouldn't hurt her. But there's that one scene where they show in the really quick flashback that they show Letitia laying on the ground, and then it shows Christina as Ruby looking out the window, the open space, and she's mouthing something. It's the spell to put that back on, and that basically resurrects her. There's an awful lot in there that they just zipped by so quickly that well, actually, now that I think about it, I've got another minor problem. It zipped by so quickly that you have to literally go back and slow down and watch that like at half speed or something, or just pace through it to go, oh, that's why this happened. That's not a plot hole because this happened. It's not a plot hole because that happened. And that, from a particularly a visual storytelling standpoint, was a problem for me anyway, because I felt the same way. I was like, okay, what's with all these plot holes? Why are they leaving these things just, why didn't they answer that in something that was so intricately, tightly scripted up to that point? And those explanations are in all of those mental images that are zipping by real quickly. The other problem I had is Ruby's death, assuming it's a death. I'm hoping it's not. I've seen some people who are talking about the fact that, she's in a coma like the others. The other two aren't in a coma, they're dead. Their bodies aren't rotting because of magic, but Christina made that very clear, that William is dead and Dell/Hillary is dead. So one would assume that Ruby is also dead. And in fact, Christina actually tells Letitia that she killed her. So, unless she was lying, which could be the case. But to have that happen off screen, to have such an important character just die and get mentioned, as a way to piss off, her sister that she's dead, I thought was pretty weak, which makes me think that maybe she isn't, that maybe in season 2, The only other thing, and this is one of those nitpicking quibbles, there were a couple of points where the CGI, actually only one point where the CGI was really off, and that was the plank across the gigantic chasm when they were under the museum in Boston. At the very end, when they're rushing, most of it was really good, but at the end, when they're rushing to get to the door on the other side, it was just like, wow, this is really weak sauce. In a show where everything else, like the fire effect when Hannah, the first time he sees in that dream Hannah running out of the lodge back in 1833, and when he follows her out in episode 2 when the whole lodge collapses, the fire follows her through the hallways, but as she moves past him, it's no longer there. And the building is collapsing around him. And that special effect, as they kept it moving through the hallway, I thought was brilliant. I was like, this is really cool. And then they go do that, CGI plank thing. It's like, ugh. So those are my only 2 complaints. And we haven't talked about yet, and we're going to get into this now, the really big important stuff in this show. And that's the overall themes of the show. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, and wait a second as I bring up the mics for you guys, what did you think about the way the theme of racism in the United States, or in the world in general, but particularly in the United States, certainly in the pre-civil rights movement all over the United States, but even today, because he goes to the future, so you can say this stuff happens today. How did you feel it was handled? How did you feel they presented it? And ultimately, what was your impression of that work? And we'll start with Byron.
Well, as far as allegories for racism go, you could definitely do a lot worse. Because, if you know anything about racism, you're gonna see you're gonna see some stuff in it, and it's going and if you have even the slightest bit of empathy, you're gonna feel something from those scenes. But the cops were pretty on point. I will definitely say that much. The scene where Christina basically pay these men to put her through the same hell that Emmett Till was put through. That I know that she did that in an effort to understand what Ruby was going through, but still, it was just like, wow. The message that it sent was just like, okay, if you want to understand our pain, you got to do the work. And it was done in a literal sense, but sometimes that's what you have to do. Maybe not literally, but you have to sometimes you have to educate yourself.
So before I get to Manny, the same question, Kepra, was it just me, or was that scene where she sloughed off her skin while she was having sex hot, or what? I'm going to go with just you, but I can't speak for the other people on the panel. Sadie Schultz, welcome to the show. Once again, warning, this is all spoilers for Lovecraft Country. If you haven't seen the show and you don't like spoilers, turn away. Kawani, I'm sure I'm saying that name wrong. Olu, welcome to the show. And the same warning. Spoilers for Lovecraft Country. If you haven't seen the show and you want to, please turn away. So, Manny,
Yes.
Same question for you. The overall themes, how was it handled, and how do you think they did with that?
One of the themes about generational abuse, I thought that was handled really well. It's probably one of the few shows. Actually, I don't think of no one of the few shows. It be shows that some comedy shows in maybe in the '80s, like the Jeffersons, maybe kind of like hinted at it here and there. But the fact that it discussed about like abuse being passed down from father to son, and then to son becomes father, then to this to their sons, to their children.
Yeah,
I thought that was amazing. I'm glad that it was a great theme to bring up, and not only that, they actually talked about okay, how can we fix this and how can we heal each other? You know, like
absolutely.
I thought that was tremendous. Magic was kind of a symbol of power
Yes,
in the show.
privilege. Yeah.
At the end, when they pretty much wiped away all white magic users, pretty much all they taken away their access to magic. To me, it was kind of a symbol saying that hey, black people are taking what was stolen from them back. You know, this is this their time to shine. That's how I understood it. Uh, I and again, I love the little homages to pulp writing, the 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 space adventures. You know
Yes,
that was really amazing. You know the idea of like what I, I become. What name do you pick for yourself? What do you become? I love that exploration of thought and character and like how how does other people
absolutely.
naming you affect you? You know, it just there's so many wonderful things about that in the show. Those are the three at least stand out to me for theme wise.
Yeah, I going back on that point for a second. I absolutely love that again more allegorical stuff being done here because we talk about a lot of people in the black community talk about like slave names and whatnot, and that was that was a great allegory for taking back your identity, not just being what the world wants you to be, and just opening your mind to new experiences, which is something that I feel a lot of people in the black community don't always do.
Got to bring my mic up here and bring you guys down. So, so many things you guys said that I want to try to remember to get in here. So, first off, Manny's point about the pulp and also golden age science fiction writing. The fact that George and Atticus like drop names to Clark Ashton Smith, of these golden age science fiction and fantasy authors that would be on their shelf because that's what would be there at that time frame. Um, I loved it. I absolutely adored that they were calling out all of these names of people that I read in collections of Golden Age stuff back when I was reading Silver Age stuff in the 60s and 70s. Um, the theme or the topic or the overall tone of the whole narrative being about race, um, I agree that it was incredibly strongly done and well done. It's also an interesting in that it is a absolutely on its face story about race because you've got references to things like the death of Emmett Till and so on, or even just they're showing people who can't get a job at like the biggest department store in Chicago because they're black. Um, but then also every level below that is about race. Like Manny, like you said, the idea of access to the elements of power. In this case, it was magic and not wealth. But in the real world, it's wealth, and in the part of this fictionalized world, it's magic and wealth and everything else. Um, every subplot, but Byron is going to let you know. Byron said subplot. Remember, your mics are off, so we can try to eliminate the echo. Um, But both of you mentioned in sort of different ways the idea of identity. And I think that's also a huge part. Everything about this show is about identity. It's about racial identity, it's about personal identity, it's about sexual identity. You have characters that change their race, you have characters that change their sex, you have characters that discover different aspects of their own sexuality. You have inter intergender characters in Yahima. which unfortunately, that character didn't last nearly long enough. Well, there we go. That's Yahima character. Obviously, you can't see it here, but when Yahima first shows up, they are completely naked. Actually, they're a mummy, essentially mummified, and then they fill back out, and they have breasts and male genitals. And just even that aspect of it, so much of what the show touches on in every bit of it is about identity, including Hippolyta's journey, where she basically goes into a realm that I kind of got really big Wrinkle in Time vibes from that. I don't know about you guys. But it was wonderful. And like Manny said, that is you name yourself and that is what you are. That names are important. And giving you the power to name yourself, to identify yourself, which Montrose finally did at the very, very end, or near the very end. But only when he went back and looked at the tragedies that happened in Tulsa when he was a kid, and how that affected his self-hatred as a gay black man, which, that self-hatred was driven by his dad abusing him, and so he turned right around and abused Atticus. All of this show is about identity, and then it also happens to be mostly about racial identity. But like I said, gender identity and sexuality identity and self-identification, all of it is I think, the general overarching theme of the whole show, which in a show about a black family also has to be about race. So given that, do you think that the fact that you have a always in your face, directly upfront story about racism in America, and almost all of the subtext being about identity, mostly racial identity, was that too heavy-handed? Did they hit too hard on that nail all the time? Byron.
For me, I feel like you can never be too heavy-handed with that narrative, because it's in our face in reality. You turn on the news, there's some racially charged incident going on now as much as ever has. So to ask that question, I definitely think we need it, because it makes people think. Not everybody's going to think about it. Some people are going to ignore it, and that's them. But you can't teach everyone, but you can teach someone.
To me, it's probably one of the few shows, and I like that more shows are coming out like this. Like Watchmen was another one that's starting to show this, that is showing pretty much a really good picture, more realistic picture of what race is like in America. I mean, I've seen so many shows kind of pull back, especially nowadays. I mean, I'm showing my age here, but like in the late 70s, early 80s, you had these like great sitcoms come out that kind of address this, All in the Family, Jeffersons, so many like that. Cosby Show, but then it kind of just disappeared. And I'm glad that we're coming back and looking at that. So I think if people complain that's too heavy-handed, I wish I could live in your neighborhood.
Yeah, see, that's me as the white guy talking. I agree. I don't think it was too heavy-handed. In fact, I think that it couldn't be anything but that, because of the nature of what the show is about. It's about a black family in pre-civil rights United States. So it has to be, if you told their story without just slamming racism in your face every moment, because that's what they experience. Sadly, that's what a lot of black people still experience. It would be a disingenuous story. You wouldn't be telling the whole story. So I think that's absolutely the case. I also think in this case, one of the things that makes it, even if you do subscribe to the argument that it's heavy-handed, it's crafted so well that it's one of you don't mind somebody beating you up against the head when it's such a beautiful glove that they're slapping you with. I mean, it's just really, really well done. and therefore, I think whether it's heavy-handed or not, it doesn't matter. It's so well crafted. Kepera asks, can we please talk about how beautiful the ghosts and other supernatural scenes have been? Freaking awesome. And Waifu says, it's good that there's different kinds of characters that show sexual identity in different types of races in I'm assuming you mean in entertainment in general. Certainly in this show, it's everywhere. So before we get into sort of wrapping up some of the other aspects of the show, let's talk about that, the production quality in general, but in particular, the special, the ghosts, the beautiful ghosts, the scary ghosts, God, those twins or those girls. Oh, wow! And they give them a name, and I can't remember what they're actually called. It's some old, probably insulting term that was used for, I'm guessing, for black children.
Topsy and Bopsy.
Right, but I mean, what they are, like the things that they are, is that's used somewhere in the show at some point, and it.
It's a reference to. I know this is a reference to Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Right. No, that's Bobo is actually Emmett Till. That's Dee's nickname for him. Apparently, and this they didn't make really terribly clear, but apparently that was like one of Dee's best friends. So the girls, wonderful, beautiful, terrifying. The ghosts in the basement of Letitia's house, just amazing, horrifying, like really horrifying. But the transformation scene where they, in the process of becoming powerful enough to try to drive out the original house of Epstein, the original house owner. It's funny that they call him Epstein, but I guess that's in the book, and it might have been written before then. It's amazing to watch them go from those things that he had done horrible experiments on, to back to the real people they were. And of course the ancestors. Just absolutely gorgeous. How did you guys view any of that portrayal of the sort of horrifying stuff and or the sort of beautiful spiritual stuff?
Well, first of all, being a spooky boy, I loved all of like the aesthetic of the horror here. Like, it was my jam. I love the practical effects too. Some beautiful practical effects. I don't know who had a hand in the aesthetic of or these directorial decisions, but give them a raise, because I love horror. I love it more when it's a practical effect as opposed to CGI, because it never looks believable in the CGI. So yeah, it's like the twins, those two girls. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's two really talented actresses with, obviously, I'm guessing ballet training or whatever. That, ugh.
Yeah, the gore in this show is excellent. It's well done.
Episode 1.
Yeah, there was. I'm trying to think if there's anything that stood out to me gore wise, but it was all. I mean, graphic wise, it was excellent. The transformation scenes, sound effects, the music in this show is also very excellent.
Yes.
At first when they were using some like modern music in this show, at first it threw me off a little bit. I'm like why would they do that? But now I see that as I was watching the episode, I see it's not there because to give you the sense of time. It actually helps sense of mood. And so that was excellent. And once I got that, it was great.
I would argue that the fact that they use modern music kind of implements the idea of like how like a lot of these racist themes are timeless.
And I mentioned this to Byron when we were doing Tuesday's show, our new show, or we were talking in advance of it. I had exactly the same reaction you did, Manny, particularly through the first 2 episodes. I'm like, okay, what, this is 1955. Why is there rap? What's going on here? Until, and I didn't even realize it until they actually started playing the poem at the end, that the title of the second episode was Whitey on the Moon. And they started playing the recording of the poem Whitey on the Moon, which was written in the 1970s or 1970, and is one of the most effective poems about the difference between race and class. I can't pay my landlord, but Whitey's on the moon. And once I heard that, and that brought back, I hadn't heard that song since, I'm thinking, in college days, so 40 years, or poem, spoken word. But it immediately came right back to me. I got the guy wrong. I actually thought it was Dick Gregory, and it turns out it's Gil Scott-Heron. But I'm like, oh my God, I haven't heard this in 4 decades. And it came right back to me. And as soon as I made that very personal connection with what they were doing with the music and all of the recorded stuff. So there are a number of recorded poems in addition to the rap music and the other music that's anachronistic, that start or finish an episode. And they're all fantastic. But once I got that, sort of really memorable connection to it, I went, all right, I'm fine. You want to put up some Wu-Tang Clan? Let's go. So ultimately, I think what Lovecraft Country is leaving us with is I think, a big problem. And here's the huge spoiler, folks. Huge spoiler, folks. Atticus dies at the end. They carry his body off on a bier. I mean, it's he's dead. He does his Jesus death, and boy, is it a Jesus death. Did Jonathan Majors sign on to this for like one season? Is he dead? Is Atticus dead? Is Ruby dead? And if not, how do you feel about them leaving us with this, oh, by the way, it's all been a dream, or whatever they're going to do? The writing's too good for that, but whatever they're going to do in the first episode of season 2.
I'm definitely excited for whatever surprises they might pull out, because that's been a big thing about the series. Like, me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of surprises, because it's usually like a surprise punch in the face, for me at least. But every single surprise this season has been, it has been a maelstrom of awesomeness, and I want to see what they do for an encore.
I've been debating this internally when I want to see season 2, because season 1 was so good that I'm worried that a season 2 will ruin it. But it's actually, I'm actually in the works of trying to get the book. I want to actually read it to see if there's more going on afterwards. Is this how the book ends? Don't spoil it for me.
No, I just started the book.
Oh, you did? Okay. But I would like to see season 2, but I hope, I don't know. I really hope, I don't know. I want him to go in a different direction, but I mean, the writing's so good in the show. I trust them that wherever they go, I'll watch it.
All right, so here's where I'm going to do what I warned you guys about earlier, and I'm going to go white man. So the one thing that is obvious that they can explore going forward is, as Byron said with the other big spoiler about the big ending, oh no, Manny said it, that they bind magic from white people. White people cannot use magic anymore throughout the whole world. It's just done. Now that makes sense. That's where they have to take the story, is what are the effects of that. If you remember when Atticus is telling his sort of dad, telling Montrose about what he saw in the future, even for the few seconds he was there, that white people were rioting. White people were rioting. Is that because the people now with the actual power, the magic, are in power, and the white people are the underclass and are rioting because that? They need to explore that My problem is that we now are in the issue of the definition of white people. And so they've made it very clear that magical folklore and other magics from other ethnic groups exist and work. Jia is a kumiho, a nine-tailed fox spirit, from Korea. And that's very important to the story. So what about Jewish Kabbalists? Are Hebrews white? Are the Hebrews that have had so much mixture from the diaspora into Europe that they are blonde or redheaded white? In the fact that they're not using whatever this magic, the Book of Names type magic that the Christina and the family were, they use Kabbalistic magic. A completely different, and it would be a completely different kind of magic. Do they explore that? Is that something they want to explore? And I don't think that there's any chance that Jordan Peele would be this like cut and dried, or are they basically going to say, okay, white people is a block completely? It's anything not other than white has magic.
Well, this is what I think. I think the way the show kind
of... Hold on. There you go.
Okay. I think the show, if you're looking at the show to try to answer that question, it's whatever. I think it's what you decide to name yourself. If you, I think when hopefully maybe in season 2, if they do that, they'll explore that. I think we know that like when people try to say like, oh, why is there what's no White History Month or white culture, and
why can't I say white pride?
like if Mexican, Irish, Puerto Rican, like that's, you could celebrate that, but there is no white. The reason why Black culture exists because we took slaves from Africa and took away their heritage. We don't know they're from what part of Africa, so that's why that exists. So maybe the answer to that question lies in whatever they decide to call themselves. They align themselves to this idea of white culture, this against this anti-Black, anti-minority stance, then you have no magic. That's just a guess.
I'm sorry. I kind of lost my train of thought. What were we discussing again?
Hold on. So we were discussing the idea of whether or not they have to explore the concept of white identity now that they've bound all white people from magic, and knowing that they have set up that there are other folklores that have their own magic systems, like Yahima's people or the Koreans. Where are they going to take that? Are they going to take that in season 2, and what are they going to do with it?
I feel like in like the sense of American whites, they don't have to explore that because they're all immigrants from like various European cultures. You can talk about the European cultures, like you can bring up Baba Yaga from Russian folklore, or even Arthurian legend from England. There's a total bulk of stuff you can get from there, or even Horus the sun god from Egypt. Like you can or even Japanese culture with yokai, with Shinto priests or whatnot. I would love to see more stuff like that.
So yes, I think that would be wonderful, but I guess my question is, how do they deal with the fact that having bound all white people from magic, that there are people that are not pale, or they're not, or are pale skinned, like many Hebrews, who might be also considered to be white, but have that other ethnic magic system like Kabbalistic magic. Are they going to, and would it even make sense to explore the idea of what white identity means now that white people have been barred from magic?
I think they could probably make it. They could probably do a narrative where it's more like what's in their heart that makes them, that bars them from magic.
Sort of like what Manny was saying.
Yes.
All right, cool. And I think so. And I am much less worried about season 2 than Manny is. Unless they just completely do like, as the example you gave, American Gods, and like boot showrunners. Well, actually, the showrunners jumped ship. At the end and have to completely clean house and bring in all new people. One, I can't see Jordan Peele doing that. Two, I can't see anybody who works for Jordan Peele ever wanting to do that. But it could happen, and if that happens, and we wind up with a shell of its former self in season 2, that would suck.
I hope not.
I mean, please not. But that would be the only reason I would be even remotely worried and not just scoop up season 2 as fast as I can. So I think ultimately the takeaway from what our main point was: is this heavy-handed? Yeah. Does it need to be heavy-handed? Yes. Is it handled in such a way that it doesn't seem heavy-handed? Yes. The fact that the subtext all leads into the main topic and theme of racism and racial identity is just so brilliantly woven into the entire story that when you sit back and you go, if I was just looking at it subjectively, that's really heavy-handed. Like, there's nothing in this show that isn't about identity, and particularly racial identity. But there's nothing in the show that isn't about identity, and that's really important. And they craft it so beautifully. Final thoughts, gentlemen. We've actually gone almost an hour. Wow. Byron.
I can't wait for season 2. I've said it multiple times, but it bears repeating. I applaud the entire creative team, and it's definitely a story that needs to be told in this social climate.
Hear, hear. Manny?
We all know that H.P. Lovecraft, although genius horror writer, was a piece of crap. He was a horrible, racist human being. And seeing that a bunch of talented Black writers, actors, talented people taking some of this pulp work and making it into something much more special than he has ever done. I hope he's a ghost somewhere and he's just seething in rage right now.
That's a little vindictive, but ultimately completely justified.
I totally agree.
So I think I'm really looking forward to season 2, like Byron certainly is, and like Manny kind of is with a lot of worry. I can't wait to see it. And given what everybody in this show has done as far as an amazing job of acting, even though he's pretty much denying, because he has to, that this is the character he's playing, I can't wait to see Jonathan Majors as Kang in the next Ant-Man movie. Damn, he's good. So good. And that's it, folks. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's Full Fat Spoiler Chat. Next week, Raised by Wolves. We swap things around for convenience sake for some people who are watching stuff. So next week we'll be doing Raised by Wolves, the HBO series. I still have to come up with a teaser for it, because again, the teaser I come up with is actually a spoiler in and of itself. So I'm going to have to come up with something else to say it. But if you've seen Raised by Wolves, or if you don't mind spoilers, tune in next week, Thursday, 8 o'clock. And if you want to hear our roundup of the news from the past week, Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. And we will see you folks later. Gentlemen, let's start with Manny, if you say your goodbyes.
Well, take care, everyone, and be safe out there.
And Byron.
Take care, guys. See you soon.
See you soon. And, wear those masks. Wash those hands. And keep that social distance. And
6
vote.
feet apart.
If you've watched Lovecraft Country, and if it's told you anything, boy, do you need to vote. So, thanks you folks. Good night. We'll see you next week.